Shalom, everybody. It is a great honor to have with us Rabbi Avraham Aryeh Trugman to be presenting Growing Through Genesis, Personal Growth, Spiritual Growth. Rabbi Trugman has over 40 years of experience in the field of Jewish education. He was a founding member of the Karlbach Moshav Modi'in, where he has lived since 1976. He has been involved with many organizations. Right now, he is the director of Or Chadash, the New Horizons in Jewish Experience, and has had in his home hundreds, I don't know, Rabbi Trugman, what do you think, thousands of people?
Many thousands.
He's a prolific author of many books, 18 books, 7 musical albums, and it's a great honor to have with us presenting Spiritual Personal Growth Through Genesis, Rabbi Trugman.
Thank you, Reb Tully. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to hear about the whole online digital program that you're going to be offering. It sounds fantastic. I can just hope that I can share what I can. And I just want to say that I was asked maybe to sing a song just to get things going. And I was thinking that everyone in the world is going through this pandemic in one way or another. And there's no doubt that digital community is what's happening right now. There's so many communities that are struggling just to keep relevant because of all the shutdowns and everything. And so we definitely are moving into a new age. And community is just such an important thing. So I just want to sing a song. Really, there's only one word, and that is yachad, which means together. So I think most people remember the famous line from the movie A Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. So many times I start my classes because people tend to come late. And I always say, if you sing, they will come. So whoever is out there, just one word here. And let's try to make a digital community even for the half an hour that we're together. Yachad, 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 yachad. Ay, 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 ay. Ding 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 ding. I die 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 die. I ding 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 die 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 die. Yambai damba die. Ding 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 die. Yachad 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 yachad. Yachad, 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 yachad. I and I die, and I and the ding ding die, and the ding die, and the ding die, die, ding die. I, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 and the ding 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 ding, and the ding 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 ding, yachad, 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 and the ding 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 ding, and the ding 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 ding, and the ding 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 ding, and the ding 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 ding, ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 and the ding ding, and the ding 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 ding. I die 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 ah. I die 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 die. Okay, now that we're yachad here.
That was so nice. Thank you, Rabbi.
So let's do some learning. I want to start by saying that everything in the Torah is archetypal. What do I mean by this? Everything in the Torah is written, is given over in a way that it is relevant to every person in every generation and at all times. That the way that the Torah is given over is we can find infinite meaning in it. And each person has their own, what's called face or perspective into the Torah. So here we're going to start from the beginning. And so there's truly, there are infinite ways that we can approach Genesis. I understand from Israel 365 that there's going to be prayer through Genesis, cooking through Genesis, political activism through Genesis, and we're going to deal with personal growth. So in the short amount of time we have today, I picked one idea that we're going to try to run through the first parsha, and that is the idea that God created the world and continues to create the world through speech. What is meant by this? According to our tradition, in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, which is a compilation of moral and ethical teachings. It's not a mystical tract whatsoever, but in the Ethics of the Fathers, it says that with 10 expressions of speech, God created the world. So what this means is, if you look through the days of creation, we'll notice that it says, and God said, let there be something, and that something came into being. So through this, we learned that God created and creates through speech. Every morning in our prayers, we say, Baruch she'amar v'haya olam. Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. So our question really is, why does the Torah have to tell us or express this idea of the connection between creation and speech? So since everything in the Torah is there to direct us, to reveal to us matters that affect us on a daily level. Even the most mystical parts of the Torah eventually get translated into relevance, into how to live our lives. So what we can learn is that if God creates the world through speech, I hear some kind of echo there. Okay, that's better. If God creates the world through speech, and humanity is created in the image of God, so that means that there is something about the power of speech that can create worlds. There's actually a midrash. A midrash is a compilation of allegorical and metaphorical teachings. And in it, it quotes God as saying, I create worlds and you can create worlds. So what we want to understand is how we create worlds through speech and how we destroy worlds through speech. So first of all, I want to say is that we're taught that the soul has 3 garments. What does this mean? The soul expresses itself through 3 different means: thought, speech, and action. That is how the soul is able to express itself in the world, through thought, speech, and action. So what we want to understand is, if God creates the world through speech, and again, we have to understand that God's speech is not necessarily like our speech. There's really nothing about God that is exactly like us. But again, since we're in the image of God, the concept of God creating through speech gives us the power. So we're going to look at very, very quickly, because that's all the time we have, a number of incidences in this parsha, in this first Torah portion of Genesis, that have to do with speech. And the first one is on the sixth day when man is created. So it says that God blew into the nostrils of man a living soul, and man became, he blew into the nostrils a living soul, and man became a living soul. So the Aramaic translation, the Onkelos, translates a living soul as a speaking soul. Now, this is very significant because in English, we categorize creations according to 4 different levels: mineral, vegetable, animal, and human. In Hebrew, we do the same thing, but the words are different. And it's very interesting that the mineral world is called domem, silent. And the human level is called midaber, speaking. So in other words, there's something about speech that is exclusively human. Now, the first question would say, well, wait, animals communicate, and they do. But only man communicates complex ideas through speech. And that is one of the understandings of being created in the image of God. There are many different explanations, but 2 of the most important are free will and the ability to express complex ideas through speech. But if we can create worlds, then in a sense, we can destroy worlds also. An example of creating worlds is, in a sense, what we're doing right now. Through speech, we are imparting wisdom. We are imparting spiritual direction and giving people emotional strength. Sometimes by just saying hello to someone in a friendly way can change a person's whole day. We all know that you could have, for example, a 20-year friendship, and if you say the wrong thing in 10 seconds, you can ruin a relationship for the rest of your life by saying the wrong thing. Another not good example is around 75 years ago, a person arose in Germany, and he took what was supposed to have been the most cultured, advanced society in the world, and through an incredible power of speech, he was able to do the most horrific things, to take a whole society and turn it around through the power of his speech, but also in the positive way. Actually, if you take the word Mashiach, Messiah, and you switch the letters, it could be read as Messiach, the one who knows how to converse, the one who knows how to impart a universal idea to the world that will be accepted. Obviously, the Mashiach, the Messiah, will be charismatic in the extreme. But how will he get his message across? Through speech. So now let's look, though, at a number of examples in the portion of Genesis where speech goes wrong. So already we see that the Aramaic translation translates a human being as a speaking spirit. But if we look in the Garden of Eden, and first of all, I have to say that the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent and the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life is so deep and so profound. But sadly enough, many people read it just whatever translation you're reading, without any of the oral tradition behind it. And for many, let's say, young people being brought up in the world, we read a story about a talking serpent and eating from a tree of knowledge of good and evil. It seems like almost ludicrous, but that's only because people don't understand the depths of this and many, many other what are called stories in the Torah. So this story of Adam and Eve and the serpent and these trees is laying out the existential reality of the human psyche. We don't have time to go into it, but the point I want to make is, how did Eve and then Adam end up eating from the tree? Because the serpent, through the power of his speech, in a sense, tricked Eve into thinking that she could eat from the tree, that it was a good thing to eat from the tree. And it was all done through speech. So here we see, right at the beginning of Genesis, how we ended up leaving the Garden of Eden, being expelled, because the snake, who the Torah describes as being the most cunning of creations, through the power of speech, the subtle power of speech, he convinced Eve not only that she shouldn't not listen to God, but that it was a good thing to eat from the tree. That's how powerful speech can be. We see another example, and that is with Cain and Abel. There's a whole story of them bringing an offering to God. It was actually Cain's idea to do that. But according to tradition, he brought not his best, where Abel did bring his best. And God accepted Abel's offering. And then the Torah says, and Cain spoke to Abel, and then they were in the field, and Cain kills Abel. But what's interesting, it doesn't say what they talked about. But obviously, it was a type of conversation that led Cain to kill his brother. Again, this is the opposite of creating worlds. This is the power of speech to destroy worlds. This was the first murder. And in our tradition, we're taught that every person is a world to themselves. And that if someone kills, God forbid, another person, it's as if they killed a whole world. They destroyed a whole world. So here again, we see another example. And I want to go actually backwards, is after Adam and Eve eat from the tree. So it says, then they understood that they were naked and they covered themselves up. And then they heard the voice of God in the garden and they hid. And God says, it's in Hebrew, it's one of the most powerful words in the entire 5 books of Moses. Ayeka, where are you? But it wasn't in like a physical sense. It's where are you holding? What have you done? What were you thinking? This word has echoed through all the generations, this word ayeka. And so they answered that they were hiding because they were afraid at that point, and they were naked. And God says, oh, does that mean you ate from the tree? And according to our tradition, at that moment, they had the possibility of repenting. And we're taught that had they at that point repented through speech, they would not have been expelled from the garden. They made a mistake. They did something wrong. But what happened? Eve blamed the snake, and Adam blamed Eve. So instead of taking responsibility and just being honest about it, they lost the opportunity that they had through speech to fix the situation. And we're taught that there was a golden moment that was lost. So from these few examples, we can see the power of positive speech and the power of negative speech. And just like God creates worlds and in a sense can destroy worlds also, the next week's parsha is the flood. Human beings also have that power. So obviously on a very, very simple, straightforward level, we learn how important it is to guard our speech. One of the commandments in the Torah is not to speak what's called lashon hara, gossip. And I'm sure everyone can think of 100 examples from our own lives where we fall into the trap of speaking not positively about other people. And for various different psychological reasons. And it's actually said that speaking badly about someone is like going up on the Empire State Building with a feather pillow and ripping it open and just throwing it over, and the feathers just go, thousands of feathers go all over the place. Meaning, once you say something, it's out there. It's in the world. Now, for any of you who either lived through the 60s and 70s or have watched the movies or read the books, so you'll remember the idea of what was called good vibrations. If anyone remembers the song by the Beach Boys, good vibrations, good vibes. But the truth is, there's something to this. And actually, scientifically, it's been proven. This idea, we used to think that it was kind of like a new age kind of hokey thing, let's say, to see someone's aura. But scientifically, they have shown that everyone is emanating vibrations. We are made up of atoms, and atoms are energy. And each person, each tree, each even stone has a molecular atomic energy to it. And it is actually vibrating because matter is energy. So even when we think a thought, it has repercussions. Remember in the beginning, we said that there are 3 garments of the soul: thought, speech, and action. We know that action obviously makes a huge difference. Whatever we do changes reality. But our point here is when we speak, it also changes realities. It can make friends and it can lose friends. It can make beloved relations, and it can make hateful relations. And the same thing with thoughts. Sometimes we think, oh, whatever we think, no one knows what I'm thinking. So it doesn't really have any repercussions. But our thoughts ultimately affect our speech and our action. The problem with a lot of people, and probably all of us at different times, is we should think and then speak. But how many times do we speak without thinking? We speak without thinking. We get the order mixed up. Now, in the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, in the 3rd chapter, very, very famous chapter. I'll mention another song from the 60s that probably everyone still knows by the group called the Birds, is "To everything there is a season, turn, turn, turn." And it actually goes through the different parts of King Solomon's different times for different seasons. One of them, there's actually 14 pairs. And one of them is, there's a time to be silent and there's a time to speak. So I want to speak about this just for a minute, is when I said that the Aramaic translation of a human being is a speaking spirit. In Hebrew, it's ruach mimalala. It's from the word mal. In Hebrew, the word for word is milah. A word is a milah, meaning it's ultimately will be spoken out. So the word is mal. One of the, maybe actually the most mysterious word in the entire Bible comes in the vision of Ezekiel, where he sees an energy. It's called chashmal. In modern Hebrew, chashmal is electricity. So it was very hard to describe what Ezekiel was seeing, but he saw this energy called chashmal. So the sages in the Talmud discuss, what does this word actually mean? And they say it's actually 2 words, 2 syllables, chash, mal. Chash means to be silent. Mal means to speak. And that this energy is that on one hand, there's a time to be silent and there's a time to speak. Now that takes a tremendous wisdom. We all know how many times we're tested when, like, we want to blurt something out, but something tells us, no, it's not the time to speak now. And we all fall into the trap of speaking when we should be silent, and sometimes being silent when we should say something. But on a deeper level, it's the idea of being silent and speaking at the same time. Now, I'm not sure why I came to this, but another song from the 60s that everyone knows, Simon and Garfunkel, "The Sounds of Silence." And this is quite literally taken from this concept in Ezekiel, chashmal, which is really translated as a speaking silence. Again, mal is speaking, chash is silent, mal is speaking. So literally translated means the speaking silence or the sounds of silence. And what's interesting is the prophets of old, in order to be on the level of receiving prophecy, many of them went into the desert and they learned the secret of silence. If anyone has ever been to the desert, could be in America, it could be other places, here in Israel, the Negev, there's an awesome silence in the desert. A very awesome kind of experience is to feel and to hear the silence. And once the prophet was attached and could connect to that silence, then he could hear the word of God. So what's interesting is the word for desert in Hebrew is midbar. But if you say the same word and you just change the vowels, it's midaber. The desert is a place of speech. But paradoxically, if you're alone in the desert, you feel the silence. So this is this paradox. Now, obviously, before God spoke the world into being, so what was there before? So of course, we don't know what was before, but we're told that maybe the only way we could think about it was the infinite light of God. There was no time, there's no space, there's no matter, there's no creation. There's only the infinite being of God. And so in a sense, we can conceive of that as an infinite silence. And then God speaks the world into being. So we need to learn from that on a very practical level. So we're coming towards the end of the half an hour that we have here. So I just want to bring it together in a very practical way, that every portion in the Torah is not just talking about stories a long time ago. That's the first thing we said, that every story is archetypal. So today we tried to concentrate on just one concept, speech, and how we as human beings can be godly through our speech by being positive, saying good things through prayer, through writing, through speech, through teaching, through relationships. And if we keep it positive, we are employing God's method of creating the world. And as we've learned, just the opposite. If we don't use that possibility, then we end up destroying relationships. We end up saying things that we shouldn't say. We end up speaking before we think. And we end up speaking before we've integrated this idea of being silenced. One other thing, and we'll end with this, that it says in the Ethics of the Fathers, is that a fence around wisdom is silence. Now, wisdom needs to be given over, needs to be expressed, but it should be in an overall context of knowing when to speak and how to speak, and to really weigh if what I'm about to say is going to bring goodness into the world, is going to make things better, or perhaps the opposite. So I look forward to seeing you back here next week. And again, I want to thank Israel 365. They are doing such incredible work. Their website, their articles, everything that they do, the incredible Bible that Israel 365 put together, Reb Tuli Weiss put together this amazing concept of the Bible and Eretz Israel. And tell your friends, and not just my class. Apparently this is 2 hours a day, every day. Take advantage. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for that
Thank
important
you so
lesson
much.
on the power of prayer as we begin studying Genesis together. Shalom, shalom from Israel.